Politically speaking, especially after the conquest of Constantinople, and despite its vast territories in Asia and Africa, the Ottoman Empire was essentially a European power. However, in terms of the cultural belonging of the Ottoman Empire and its impact over the state bureaucracy, the matters of dynastic succession, and relations between the political actors of the realm, the Sublime Porte was undoubtedly different from Europe and was more of a mix of Turkic and Islamic traditions and laws. In Europe, different royal families were in a constant cycle of marriage alliances, and spouses of kings and emperors of Europe were of royal descent. This was radically different in the Ottoman Empire, as for a very long time, the sultans would not have legal wives, but have numerous concubines living in the harem who would provide the Ottoman dynasty with heirs. In Islamic tradition, a harem is a place where the female members of the household reside, and the non-related males are prohibited from entering it. The word itself is derived from the Arabic haram, which means forbidden. In the Ottoman Empire, the harem housed the sultan's concubines, mothers, sisters, aunts, grandmothers, and other relatives, along with their children and the servants working there, including eunuchs who oversaw the proper operation of the harem. The primary purpose of the harem was to ensure the continuity of the royal dynasty and provide a sultan with heirs. The concubines and servants of the harem were usually women taken as war spoils from lands conquered by the Ottomans, or sometimes gifted to the sultan as a token of respect or as an attempt to get favor. The majority of these women were Christian, who would convert to Islam, and they would receive rigorous training on knitting, cooking, playing musical instruments, dancing, poetry, court manners, Quran reading, and more, amidst a military-like discipline. The harem was headed by the Walida Sultan, the sultan's mother, who decided which of the harem's women were ready to entertain her son. A sultan could have a relationship with 4 women at a time. Such women would be called a kadin, which would literally mean a woman, but could also mean a wife in this context. The title of Iqbal would be given to the favorite women of the sultan. In order to limit the potential power of women, the harem's women were allowed to bear only 1 child for the sultan. After the male offspring of the sultan came of age, they were sent to act as governors of the Ottoman provinces, together with their mothers, to learn the craft of governance, along with possibly minimizing the potential of the mothers to meddle in politics. Their potential heirs to the Ottoman throne would be brought up by their mothers, who would often exert a very high degree of influence over their sons. Usually, sultans had minimal contact with their sons since they lived far from the capital. The Ottoman Empire succession rules were different from the European monarchies, as the firstborn male son was not an automatic choice. Sultans would refrain from naming their heirs, but often gave provinces closer to the capital to their preferred sons, which allowed them to get news of the death of the sultan first and to proclaim themselves sultan before their brothers even got the news. Up until the 17th century, a new sultan would kill his brothers to prevent any chance of internal strife. Lack of concrete succession rules and willingness of mothers to protect their sons from being murdered was going to have an impact on the Ottoman internal politics sooner or later. Historian Leslie Pearce states that by the mid-16th century, the very essence of the Ottoman state was changing. The empire was transitioning from a military state into a bureaucratic state, since further territorial expansion of the Ottoman Empire, particularly towards the west, was getting increasingly problematic and unlikely. Transition into a bureaucratic state was inevitably going to increase the role of institutions, and the harem was one of the institutions which was going to become more prominent in connection with the transition. This process started during the rule of Suleiman the Magnificent. We cannot tell the story of the Sultanate of Women without talking about Hurrem Sultan. A slave woman named Roxolana of Ruthenian origins probably entered the harem when she was in her teens. Roxolana got a new name, Hurrem, the cheerful one, and very soon rose through the ranks of women in the harem. However, by the time she became one of Sultan Suleiman's favorites, one of his consorts, Mahidevran, had already given birth to a son, Mustafa. Soon, Hurrem became the favorite of the Sultan and gave birth to 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl, in an unprecedented break from the tradition of sultans' consorts giving birth to only 1 child for him. Hurrem became the most powerful person in the harem, especially following the death of Suleiman's mother, Sultan Hafsa. In 1534, Sultan Suleiman broke with another tradition of the Ottoman Empire and legally married Hurrem after setting her free from formal slavery. Hurrem Sultan became the first consort to become a Haseki Sultan, making her equal in status to European empresses. Unlike previous concubines and lovers of sultans, Hurrem moved into the imperial Topkapi Palace and got closer to the center of political power in the Ottoman Empire. In another break from tradition, she did not leave with her sons on their regional governorship assignments and stayed back in Constantinople. Suleiman and Hurrem enjoyed a loving relationship. Hurrem was said to be a smart and intelligent person, turning into a political confidant of Sultan Suleiman and an important political player in the capital. Letters from Hurrem and Suleiman prove that she was advising him on politics and internal events. Some claim that Hurrem influenced Suleiman into ordering the killing of the Sultan's oldest son Mustafa and Grand Vizier Ibrahim Pasha in order to ensure that one of her own sons survived and became a new sultan. Hurrem Sultan was influential even in the foreign affairs of the Ottoman Empire. Her Ruthenian origins was one of the factors behind the very friendly relationship between the Ottomans and Poland. Hurrem was the first consort known for having direct correspondence with a foreign leader, as 2 of her letters to the Polish king Sigismund II have survived. In these letters, she congratulates the king on ascending to the Polish throne and sends assurances of friendship between the 2 states. Hurrem Sultan died in 1558, but her loving relationship with Suleiman the Magnificent and her political acumen ushered in a new era in Ottoman history, the Sultanate of Women. Following the death of her mother Hurrem, Mirimah Sultan became the most influential woman in the realm. She was married to an Ottoman governor of Croatian origin, Rustem Pasha, who later rose to the position of Grand Vizier. While Rustem Pasha was a capable man, Hurrem and Mirimah's support was important in his rise. Mirimah was unique, as she was neither a Haseki nor a Welida, but still had massive political influence and financial influence due to being one of the richest individuals of the empire. Even after the deaths of her father Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent and her husband Rustem Pasha, Mirimah Sultan maintained her influence, as her brother Selim II ascended the throne and sought her advice and financial support. Mirimah has also been attributed by historians for influence in foreign policy. In the 1560s, she tried to urge her father for another campaign against Malta and promised him to finance the construction of 400 ships from her own pocket. She played a key role in the normalization of relations between the Ottoman Empire and its vassal, the Republic of Regency. Nurbanu Sultan, wife of Selim II, was another prominent figure of the Sultanate of Women. Her origin is still disputed, as there are versions of her being of Jewish, Venetian or Greek descent. She was sent to Konya to Prince Selim's harem. Nurbanu was known for her beauty and intelligence, and soon became the favorite of Selim, and gave birth to 3 of his children, including the future Sultan Murad III. Once Selim II became the Sultan, Nurbanu moved together with him to Topkapi Palace as the Haseki Sultan. Nurbanu Sultan's influence particularly increased following Mirimah Sultan's death. Selim II's reign was short, and Nurbanu did everything possible to make sure that her son, Murad, became the next emperor. It is said that Nurbanu Sultan hid the fact of Selim's death for 12 days until Murad had arrived in the capital. During Murad III's rule, Nurbanu Sultan's power only rose, as her political influence could only be matched by that of experienced Grand Vizier Sokolu Mehmed Pasha. In terms of the Sultanate of Women, Murad III is notable for the transfer of the harem into the Topkapi Palace, a move which only increased the influence of the harem on the governance of the Sublime Porte. Walida Sultan Nurbanu was active in directing foreign affairs of the state as well, as she is known for corresponding with the Queen of France, Catherine de' Medici, along with being an advocate of good relations with Venice, something which might have been caused by her possible Venetian origin. She was also known for fighting against the influence of Murad III's only concubine in his early rule, the Albanian-born Safiye Sultan, who became Haseki Sultan after giving birth to a son. Nurbanu Sultan was unhappy that Murad III remained devoted to Safiye and had only one heir, and basically forced him to have sexual relations with other women of the harem in trying to diminish the influence of Safiye Sultan. The latter became truly influential only after the death of Murad III and the ascension of her son, Mehmed III, to power. Like her predecessor, Safiye Sultan was very powerful and had a great deal of influence over her son. During her tenure as Walida Sultan, she had a high degree of control over Ottoman finances and political matters, as Mehmed III would give almost all power to his mother during his travels and campaigns. Safiye Sultan actively pushed for good relations with Venice, along with being known for having correspondence with the English Queen Elizabeth I, who gave her a carriage as a present, which Safiye Sultan often used in her travels inside Constantinople, a thing unheard of in the conservative Ottoman Empire. The period of Safiye Sultan's rule is remembered for instability, as numerous Grand Viziers had been appointed and removed, often within a few months of starting their duties. Her influence was highly unpopular among the Ottoman military class. When in 1603, Safiye Sultan's grandson, Ahmed I, came to power, she was banished to the old palace and was removed from the seat of power for good. Ahmed I was fond of one of his concubines, Kosem, of Bosnian, Mauryan or Greek descent, and possibly his legal wife, who bore him 7 children, including 4 sons, and was titled Haseki Sultan. Despite his affection for Kosem, Ahmed I was not interested in sharing his power with the women of the court, and his 14-year rule would be remembered as a period of interruption of the Sultanate of Women. Nevertheless, she might have had some influence over Ahmed I's refusal to continue the tradition of fratricide in the Ottoman ruling dynasty, possibly in order to protect her own children. Ahmed I's death paved the way for a series of succession crises, mentally unfit sultans, and general instability in the Ottoman Empire. Following a very short reign, Ahmed's brother Mustafa I was deposed, and Ahmed's son from another concubine, Osman II, became the new sultan. Despite only being his stepmother, Kosem had certain influence over Osman II, who grew up in the same harem quarters and had an affinity towards Kosem. But only 4 years into his reign, Osman II was murdered by the Janissaries for attempting to reform the Ottoman military. While Kosem Sultan had retired to the old palace during the reigns of Mustafa I and Osman II, her political influence was still prominent, as she was part of the group which deposed Mustafa I after his short second reign. Now Kosem Sultan became the Walida Sultan and the official regent of her underage son, Murad IV. Kosem Sultan was the de facto ruler of the Ottoman Empire in this period, as she would attend the divan, meetings of the ministers of her son, behind curtains covering her from the other participants of the meetings. After Murad IV came of age, he removed his mother from power, who nevertheless was able to persuade him against killing his brother, Ibrahim. But Murad's early death led to Ibrahim becoming crowned, despite the fact that he was utterly unfit for reigning. Kosem Sultan was aware of this and did her best to rule in his stead, while encouraging Ibrahim I to entertain himself with the women of the harem instead of ruling. Very soon, another clique aiming to depose her son gathered and informed Kosem Sultan of their intentions, to which she agreed despite being his mother. But yet again, Kosem Sultan would become a regent, this time to her grandson Mehmed IV, who was only 7 years old at the time of his ascension. Nevertheless, Kosem Sultan now had a female rival, Turhan Sultan, Mehmed's mother, who did not want to cede control to her mother-in-law. The competition between the two wreaked havoc on the state, as the Ottoman Empire was suffering from internal strife and rebellions. Both sides plotted against each other, and in the end, a group of Turhan Sultan's supporters managed to get into Kosem Sultan's chambers and murder her in 1651. Immediately after this, Turhan Sultan exerted influence over political affairs in the Ottoman Empire, but 5 years later, Koprulu Mehmed Pasha was appointed Grand Vizier, while Turhan Sultan basically retired from politics. This is considered to be the end of the Sultanate of Women. There are numerous factors that made the Sultanate of Women possible in the Ottoman Empire. What started as a story of love between arguably the most powerful and influential Ottoman Sultan, Suleiman the Magnificent, and his legal wife Hurrem, led to more than 100 years of women's domination in the Ottoman Empire. Moving of the imperial harem to the imperial palace, breaking with the tradition not to marry or have more than one child with each woman of the harem, ending the practice of fratricide, ceasing to send heirs to Anatolian provinces, and a series of unfit and weak rulers are among the key factors behind the Sultanate of Women. Walida sultans and Haseki sultans ruled as regents, deposed grand viziers, plotted deposition of sultans, and advocated for war or peace with foreign countries. Historians still dispute whether the Sultanate of Women was one of the causes of the prolonged decline of the Ottoman Empire, or whether the women of power actually saved the port from chaos and disintegration amidst the period of child sultans and unfit rulers. Along with having immense political and financial power, Walida and Haseki sultans also funded the construction of monuments, public works, and engaged in charity to sway public opinion in their favour. Mosques, schools, public baths, and foundations had been built in this period, and some bear the names of their sponsors. More videos on the history of the Ottoman Empire are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see the next video in the series. Please consider liking, commenting, and sharing, it helps immensely. Our videos would be impossible without our kind patrons and YouTube channel members, whose ranks you can join via the links in the description to know our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.